Tony Beck from Lake Havasu, longtime jet skier.
That's fine. Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're talking about the SuperJet, Yamaha's example of the stand-up watercraft. This is the first year of the SuperJet. This is in 1990. Yamaha had these ready to go before 1990, but they had to wait. First, there were some patent infringement issues that they had to work through with Kawasaki until those expired so they could release the ski. There are a lot of things about the ski that are better. The 650 motor compared to this Kawasaki 650 motor was a better design, better bore to stroke ratio, and the better carburetor. They used a Mikuni SBN carburetor versus the Kian. And in hindsight, it turned out to be a better design. The only thing that they lacked was they didn't have a tuned exhaust. They were famous for being reliable. That's why the SuperJets were so successful. And then by 1993 or 92, Yamaha released a Wave Raider sit-down. It had a superior engine cases. So by 1993, the Wave Raider had a way more successful engine package. So what the racers would do is they would take those engine cases and they'd put them in their SuperJets, and they'd be more competitive. So what Yamaha decided to do was for 96, they changed the top half to this more modern top here. And as far as I know, they didn't change the bottom, but they used the Raider engine cases, and that was a better package for that. And the hood was a lot easier to deal with too. So this was the modern engine design here. You can see the engine cases they were better reed cages and better flow. So still not a tuned pipe. They never ran a tuned pipe all the way to 2020 when they ceased production of the two-stroke SuperJet. They ran this non-tuned pipe. This was called the round nose, and for obvious reasons, they called this the round nose because it was more round than the first version. This was never called a square nose until the 96 came out. So then this became famously known as the square nose. This became famously known as the round nose. So then by 07, they realized they needed to do something with the bottom because the ski wasn't as competitive as it could be. So what they did was they took a very successful racer by the name of Nicholas Rios. They took his race ski and they incorporated the bottom into this same top. Just they changed the bottom in 08. And you can see these are aftermarket sponsons, but they put wider sponsons into the hull. And then they moved the ride plate and the pump back an inch. And they were able to use a Wave Blaster drive shaft, which pushed the pump back farther. And that gave a longer intake tract. Remember our intake tract video? To help the intake tract, they laid it down and they lengthened it, which gave it better top speed, gave it better handling. They did that from 08 all the way up to 2020 when they ceased production of the two-stroke. And so now we have the four-stroke, which is lovingly known as the bullnose for obvious reasons. So we have the square nose, the round nose, the second gen round nose, and then we have a bullnose. And this is the four-stroke version. I'm not going to set this over here because they did the same thing Kawasaki did, and they don't give us gunnel pads. I don't know why. So they like to leave these naked nowadays. I'm not sure why they do that. Not a fan. This is a 3-cylinder four-stroke. I think it is 1,000 cc's, if I'm not mistaken. This is a very successful engine. They've used it in many a wave runner has had this motor for years. It's a very good engine and a very good engine package. The biggest complaint the Kawasaki riders had was that it was big and heavy and it lost its playfulness. So they returned to the smaller, simpler, lighter weight stand-ups with this version, and Yamaha went a different direction. It's a great direction. I don't think they made a mistake doing it. This has been a success as well. People that own these love them. Everyone that I know has one enjoys it. Hey everybody, we're here with Tony Beck. You guys might remember him from Walt's back in the day.
Yep, how you guys doing, man? Can't wait. So love jet ski racing.
I'm just trying to run down the history of the SuperJet because the Kawasaki was such a big. Everybody knows the history of the Kawasaki.
Yeah.
And the SuperJet seems to be just a closely guarded secret. There's just nobody that knows
Yep.
how it came about and why it came about. And
Yeah, so that's when Yamaha had introduced the wave jammer, because they couldn't have a moving handle pole. That was the biggest thing for Kawasaki, for Yamaha, not having, like, they wanted to have a stand up, so,
right.
and they were dying for a stand up. So, so that being said, they were always they had tried them for several years in R&D, but they couldn't get the patent released from Kawasaki, and the patent that Kawasaki had was a moving handle pole.
That's what the patent was about.
Okay. Yeah, so Kawasaki they wouldn't release it. So
right.
Yamaha waited around for that, so that's when they introduced wave jammer. Remember they had that stupid
the snout.
The snout looking thing, yeah, okay, you're right. I don't know what that thing was, like a bucking Bronco or something. So it was weird handlebars, but it had to be stationary.
Okay.
So that was their biggest thing. It had to be the patent was it had to be a stationary, you couldn't have a moving handle.
So that was the workaround, was the wave jammer.
The workaround it was the jammer, and that's when it came out in '87 with the
Okay.
Wave Runner 500. And that was their, so to speak, their stand-up. They called it, and their runabout.
Okay.
So, and then they waited. I think at the end, and I'm not 1,000 or 100% sure on if Yamaha ended up financially buying them out of the patent and buying it like a year or two early. The thought was that the patent was supposed to come off in '93.
Okay.
And Yamaha wanted to introduce the SuperJet in 1990.
Right.
It was the first SuperJet. So Yamaha and Kawasaki, they somehow or another, lawyer-wise or whatever, but they worked out a deal, and Yamaha was finally able to introduce SuperJet. Okay. And that was when they were first trying that 650 power plant, because that was everything up until that was the 500.
It was 500. Right.
Yeah, and then when the 650 came out, then that was when that like the Wave Runner 3, the VXR. Okay. And then the SuperJet were all that 650 power plant that Yamaha ran forever. Yeah, that was basically an outboard motor, so to speak. That was where that came from, was the outboard motor line. Okay. So that was an outboard just turned sideways. So. And I didn't realize. So that's what Steve was telling us. They were all manufactured in the same facility. Yes. I didn't know that. Yeah. So they had their own separate stuff for the like Yamaha Marine basically was outboard, and they wanted us to be outboard dealers at one point too, but we just didn't have the room for them, and we weren't selling boats. Walt's, so we just kind of turned away from that. There was just no reason for us to get involved with that. So we didn't have the floor space or anything either to display and sell boats. So in hindsight, probably would have done that, because then Yamaha ended up realizing too that they can't sell as many outboards because they just don't have a boat line. So they ended up, and they're trying to get into Mercury's market. Mercury, remember, they own the outboard market, so they still do. But Yamaha ended up buying a couple of boat lines along the way, and so they have their own lines that they put their motors on now, and they have a pontoon line, and they have a bass boat line and some other stuff. So. Oh wow! Okay, I didn't know that either. Yeah, so that's kind of what they ended up doing within the last. I don't know. That's probably within the last 20 years, I would think, or 10 years. Sure. So it was how long? Well, 11. We're 23. So probably I don't know, the last 7 or 8 years, maybe right before then. Anyway, so and buying some boat lines so that they could put outboards on boats. So okay, but yeah, out for a whole package instead of just buying the engine separately and then putting it on your own boat. So, right. Yeah. So that was kind of so. That's cool. Yeah. So that's kind of the groundwork for it right there. And then I didn't realize the wave jammer was their workaround for the patent. Yes. I didn't realize they were working on that that far before the SuperJet even came out. Yeah, they had been working on that for quite some time. We were Yamaha dealers at the time, of course, and so they offered it to the Wave Runner, or the Yamaha Wave Runner lineup was offered to the motorcycle dealers. So they really wanted it to be like you have them in a separate location. They really tried to separate the watercraft division. I remember reading that from the motorcycle division. Right. They really didn't want the two of them, because Yamaha motorcycle and Yamaha watercraft are completely different divisions. Okay. So, but obviously in our situation, being on the water, it was a huge thing for us. And then some of the big dealers in Southern California, Burrs at the time, Montclair, Yamaha, some of those guys all became Wave Runner dealers right out of the gate, because they were such high-end dealers for Yamaha. The products, they were selling so many of them, it seemed like a natural fit. Right. And so, but with us, with the water, we sold, every Wave Runner 500 we could get our hands on, and every one of them sold for full price. There was no negotiating. You were lucky to get them. Are you serious? Yeah, it was super competitive. Wow. You just couldn't find them. That's amazing. And sit-down watercraft were just starting to take off with Sea-Doo. Right. And it was and Kawasaki in '89 introduced the TS, and that was their kind of first real run in a two-seater. The X2 doesn't really count, because that was, they came out with that wedge kit that you could, or that float kit. Pontoons, the pontoons is called a float kit. There's a 3-piece float system you could buy from your Kawasaki dealer to bolt it onto the X2. And we were renting those things then, so we put those float kits on a couple X2s. And it was just comedy watching people try to ride those things.
Right.
Trying to afford them in deep water was hilarious, unless you were in decent shape. But if you were at all, and most people that were in decent shape could ride a stand-up.
Right.
So you're riding a runabout because you're not in the best shape, and then for some reason you either fall off, or the next two, like one person leans one way, that whole thing just topples over on itself.
Right.
And then, so anyway, the TS came out, and that kind of helped them along. But I mean, it was so underpowered, and it was so much slower than the competitor, which was Sea-Doo, and Sea-Doo was just killing it. Because
now, when did you guys become a Sea-Doo dealer?
In 97, 98.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, bow broker Dean.
Oh, that's right.
He felt that. Yeah, he felt that the Sea-Doo, he felt in his vision that personal watercraft was going to die. Lake Havasu was going to outlaw them.
Right.
Nobody's going to ride watercraft anymore. I don't want the Sea-Doo dealership anymore.
Right.
So we bought it for this parts department. He basically said, you know what? He goes, I really don't want any money for it. If you just pay me for everything I got left, units, parts, everything was left, all those accessories on the walls, everything. Here's an inventory list. Write me a check for like 97 grand or whatever. Buy all my inventory.
Right.
And you're the Sea-Doo dealer. So, I mean, it couldn't have been at a better time. That was when GTXs were starting to take off. And, and then we had all three lines. So you had Kawasaki, Yamaha, and Sea-Doo. And we were so happy to have Sea-Doo because they were freaking crushing us because they had just faster product. I mean, that XP was killing it.
Yeah.
And Yamaha, big claim to fame was, we're going to introduce the VXR. And it's like, my God, are you kidding me? Kawasaki's big introduction was that sport cruiser thing.
Yeah.
And we were at the dealer show, and we're sitting there waiting for this huge surprise. It's going to be the best surprise ever. And every dealer's, oh my God, Walt, you guys are number one dealer on the West Coast. You're going to order 1,000 of these things. You're going to be great. Right. And they unveiled the sport cruiser.
Wow.
Or whatever that thing was called.
Right.
Sea Couch. And it was like, we were stunned. Yeah. I mean, the whole island.
Speechless.
The whole audience was, the whole auditorium was quiet.
Wow.
Everybody just like crickets, like, the heck is that thing? Oh, look, you can slide the steering wheel back and forth. It's going to be great. I was like, it's not going to be great.
Because the Sea-Doo had already come out at this point.
Sea-Doo, they had their two-seater, the regular sport. Right. They had SP and the XP, the SPX. I mean, they kept innovating with their stuff, with their regular two-seaters, but V-Haul, super fast, good.
And you're up out of the water.
Yeah, you're stable. And then those TSs and same with that sport cruiser, those things rode terribly in the water.
Right.
I mean, they just slammed the water and had no V-bottom. It was like a flat bottom.
Right.
And 25 horsepower or whatever, and Sea-Doo just welding everything on the water. So, I mean, you couldn't touch with anything that wasn't Sea-Doo, Right. So, I mean, they just killed us. So, when we finally were able to get the Sea-Doo line, obviously for us, that was a huge thing. But, at that same time too, I mean, there was so much talk about, Bombardier, BRP is going to introduce a stand-up. They're working on a stand-up. They have stand-ups. They're going to build one. You're going to see it next year. And it kept kind of getting drug along, and then. They finally
the 3D.
They finally introduced the 3D. Like same thing with that. They invited a handful of dealers down to the Long Beach Marine Stadium. They're going to have this big introduction, this huge thing. It's going to be the best thing you've ever seen. Like each dealer manufacturer says the same thing. Like they're so passionate about it. They swear this is going to be the biggest thing you've ever seen.
Right.
And the same thing, they pull the cover off of this thing. And we're like, what is that? Like, it's a terrible stand-up. It's a terrible runabout. Yeah. It doesn't do anything good. You can't turn it standing up. The thing slides all over the place because it's like it's dead. No bottom to it.
Right.
And so then shortly after they introduced the cart seat, you could buy it for like $800.
Wow.
So their marketing with that was that they wanted to make an affordable watercraft that kids could buy. They were trying to shoot for this Gen X thing, back then. So it would have been Gen Xers that, you can buy this thing, you can buy the ski and a trailer. And they had like on the video, like somebody showing you behind like a VW Bug.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, like this is going to be great for these kids. They're going to love it. This is going to be great. Oh, everybody's going to be beating down your door for these things. Introductory price, $79,999. And I'm like, wow, $8,000. Right. Well, what kid do you know in their 20s has $8,000 for the ski, not the trailer? So you're going to be $10K.
Right.
I mean, trailers then were about $700 or $800.
A new Civic back then was $12.
Yeah, so you're going to spend $10,000 of your hard-earned out-of-college money to buy this thing that doesn't do anything for shit. Right. You can barely ride you can barely ride. You might be able to ride. What are you going to do with the thing? You get the seat thing. You're like, you need somebody else that has one because your friends on stand-ups are welding you on the course. Yeah. You guys and your friends on runabouts have like Sea-Doo SPX or XP, and they're blowing by you.
Right.
What are you doing with this thing? So that thing tanked so bad.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was just really funny because we ordered a few of them and finally we sold the last ones for nearly nothing. Same with this side, the SC, the Sport Cruiser. We sold at the end of the day, so those we were selling those things for like $1,500. And now they're 8 or 10 grand or something. It's some ridiculous price.
They've gone cult.
Yeah, it's crazy to have one, And then same thing when I see like Gomez or somebody riding with me, I get it, it's cute, but They have no power. They ride terribly.
Right.
You know, you put 1100 motor in the thing, I mean, maybe it goes a little faster, but at the end, you're not changing the ride.
Right.
The thing still, any weights at all, the thing's just pound, pound,
Yeah,
pound.
nicknamed the spine crusher.
Yes, and it cracked. The holes would break. So between where your like you came up with a handle, like that seat thing was right here at the smallest point, they kept breaking the holes right there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they kept snapping those holes, so you have giant cracks down each side because it was trying to break the boat in half.
Wow.
So it was just
slapping the water.
Just slapping the water, yep. And then
Wow.
jumping it, like people were trying to jump them and they were sinking them like out by Long Beach or excuse me, down by the military base where everybody goes jet skiing by Oceanside.
Oh, okay. Oceanside.
Yeah, so it was just funny, like this another product that just, really stuck with. When Yamaha finally introduced Wave Venture, that was when things got really going for them with Runabout.
Oh, really?
So the Wave Venture was like the real attempt at building a real three-seater that was going to be, and then the Wave Venture 1100, and now we have, and then Wave Raider 1100. So they finally started building stuff that could be competitive with the Sea-Doo.
Right.
But they were so far behind,
Right.
And then the Raider came out, and I don't think the Raider was tested very well because we used to call it the leg breaker because that thing would just lose traction at big speed, like get a little roller or something like that, and the thing would do that. And we had people spiral fracturing their kid fibs. We probably had 6 or 8 of our customers spiral fracture their legs out in the water because they get stuck in a tread. Because the gunnels were super small.
Right.
So your foot sat it and it was tall. So you put your foot in it, and then the thing would do that while you twist your body. Oh yeah, we had people violently hurt on those things.
Wow.
So it did, there was lots of trying to fix that thing, and then the GP series came out, and that was kind of replaced the VXR, and then the Wave Raider, and then the GP series, the GP 760 and GP 1200 came out. And that was kind of, now we're starting to, and the GP 800.
Right.
Now we're finally starting to get somewhere.
Right.
Now we're finally trying to, power valve motor in the 800 was kind of their big thing because that 800 class for racing was becoming really big with Sea-Doo.
Sea-Doo, yeah.
Yeah, so that was another big thing for them. So that was kind of like how they innovated, started, getting more involved in trying to be a race competitive. And that's probably when Lawler was starting to get involved with them because that was when they started racing a lot. So,
yeah.
And that was when the World Finals was here, and like 82 was their first year. And so, from just being such a small event, they started getting a lot more traction. It got a lot bigger. And it was really going places. I think the introduction of Runabout kind of hurt that a little bit. But then, it was, remember, too, in those days that the stands were, they were full. The beaches were full.
Yeah.
And it was it was hard to get qualified. To qualify for the finals, like you had to go to semi races in your region.
Right.
You had to qualify there. Then you had to come to the finals, and there would be 3 classes of expert. You'd have so many riders would show up from each region and then come to Havasu, and then to qualify. They would have 3, 4, 5 semi-qualifiers to get into the final.
Wow.
It was really competitive.
Right.
And people really tried hard to win to get to Havasu.
Sure.
It was such a big thing. So, that was, that would have been that was like when David Gordon and Rip and Kroger and Whole Shot and Lot, and that was when Butch's was getting heavily involved, West Coast, and Mariner, and they had their own riders, and they were building teams, and Kawasaki was the ski because they weren't racing anything else then.
Right.
So everything was Kawasaki.
Right.
And then the Thunderjet came out from PJS. They worked on their own ski and built their own ski, and then obviously the SuperJet was out by then, and then Hydrospace, and some people started jumping into that market of stand-up watercraft. But during that time, the economy was really good. People you could buy a jet ski for $3,500.
Wow.
So
that's
amazing.
Then
so you buy a 550 for for nothing, and stock. They weren't really. They were so unpowered, and
right.
they didn't handle. And that
sure.
was and then everybody continued to keep working on handling products, and then
right.
I think the biggest thing that Kawasaki had was when the SuperJet came out. So, because then the 650SX came out in 89, 88?
87.
87, yeah.
But
87 was blue, and then 88 was all blue, and then 89 was blue with pink.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that was just another, come out with something without testing it. They spent way
kidding.
too much time to me to come out with
Right.
it. Why would you, you had a super successful 440,
yes.
550.
550, yeah.
You come out with a completely new hull on the 650 with this little short handle pole.
Yeah.
That doesn't turn. The engine's
And
in the wrong
V-bottom,
place.
yeah.
This bottom doesn't
Yeah.
work. It's
Right.
it's just one mess after another. Then, did you have? There was a handful of those things maybe on a track at one time, and then that was it.
Right.
Then the 750 came out.
Right.
Because then Yamaha had the 701. So when the 701 SuperJet came out, that was the first round nose. It was that was a game changer. Because, and then Yamaha, for the longest time, Kawasaki owned the IGSBA. That was
right.
a leg of Kawasaki. So
right.
they wouldn't let anybody else with any other brand race. So it had to be in the IGSBA to race that. You had to be on a Kawasaki product. Well, then all the manufacturers said, hey, this is horseshit. We're going to start our own thing.
Right.
So then Yamaha introduced a hot water tour. And that was when things got really, it got really heated because there was hot water tour and Yamaha were backing, putting tons of money into these events.
Right.
Kawasaki wasn't. The IGSBA, you could race almost currently like it is now. You don't win any money really for winning finals. You get a plaque that says you won.
Wow.
But you're not getting 20 grand.
Right.
Well, hot water tour is like, hey, we're putting money into this thing. And they're running events almost back to back with the IGSBA events. So people are trying to decide now. Well, I can't do both. So I'm going to do, how hot water's giving us, give you $1,500 or $2,500 for a win. So everybody started racing Yamahas. So then finally, I think that went on for maybe a year, maybe two. It was a very short time. I'm sure Lawler had a little bit more maybe. But then IGSBA said, okay, this is enough of this. Let's everybody get together. Well, let's see, everybody can race. We'll all race under one organization called the IGSBA. And then then hot water was gone.
Wow.
So, but it was, that was some fun times because it was so competitive,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yamaha, that was like I said, Bill Chapin and these guys building these skis and Bob Zantos and Dave Miller from PJS. And these guys were just, working underneath these tents, like Bill, I'll never forget, he just had a cover over his head, a blanket, and he wouldn't let anybody even talk to him. So he had a blanket over his jet ski, and somebody had to talk to him, and he's like, leave me alone, he would just be under this thing, just doing little stuff to
his own world.
Yeah, like Jacobs, the Jammer's boat, they put the hood on it, put the hood down real quick and go to the line, and he wouldn't let it be tech inspected, he had to be there, he didn't want anybody to see the stuff he was doing, he had all these secrets, it was really funny.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was great. So, and that was that would have been 85, 86, 87, and Fish and Gocher and Slasher, Jammer. Those guys were all at that, and then when it was really going somewhere. Those guys were and they were fortunate, Terra. They were fortunate to race race personal watercraft when there was money in it.
Right.
And they could retire. Jammer's never worked.
Right.
Fish has never worked.
Right.
These guys made money.
They made a living.
They made a living at it, put money away, bought property, bought houses out here, stuff that turned into more money. They bought some lots out here in the 80s and he sold 2,000. You saw a lot for $7,500 and sold it for 20 grand, 30 grand, years ago. So, but that was when they really manufacturers were paying these guys. Rumors of $100,000 contract for Jammer, and then PJS is involved in all the sponsors. There's television.
That's back when $100,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah, and it was, and then all the television time too. It was on TV. This is really going somewhere. And then it just, I think just several incidents of bad management. I think just too many people wanting to get involved and this kind of. Then the runabouts came out, and I think it kind of slowed. The chances of getting hurt on a runabout, people like to see something that's dangerous. And if you don't ride a stand-up jet ski, you think it's more dangerous than it is. It looks exciting. There's 22 guys on the line battling, and a tire jump and this and that. Made it really fun. And then you'd watch runabouts go around the track, and everybody's riding around kind of in circles, sitting down. Nobody's, there's not. Like Supercross or motocross, there's a chance F1, NASCAR. There's a chance you could get really hurt or die. So it's exciting for the general public. I would never, they think in their head, I could never drive a car 200 miles an hour. That's crazy, So, jet skiing had that aura. Man, there's racers, and it's gonna, it was really fun to watch. And then it just, I think most people have been doing this a long time, since the 80s, would agree that when the runabout came out, it kind of broke the back of, of true watercraft or jet ski racing, because now it's not necessarily jet ski racing,
Right.
Yeah, so that was, and then, hull-wise, I can't remember when the new SuperJet came out, 06 or 07, the new hull, the new, 8.
That's this one.
Yeah, so that was when things started taking off for them, and then Kawasaki was behind the 8 ball, the 750 SXI and then the 800, and, but then it got really competitive where an 800 and a SuperJet were, the SuperJet was a little bit more fun to ride.
Right.
The 800 is a little bit heavier. The 800 seemed to go through the water a little bit better because it was a little bit heavier and different hull design. The Yamaha's a little more flighty, a little more fun to ride. So, but yeah, it was. I think all that was really fun, So yeah, and it's kind of made that whole sport to, that was pretty much it, And then as the bigger boats came out, Kawasaki was basically going to quit the stand-up market altogether.
They did, 97. What happened?
That was it. And then they were they just didn't sell enough.
I think it was right after the 96 came out, the round nose, and how he folded up and said, we're done.
Yeah, they said they're not going to do anything, and then they decided to get back into it and get like what, 02?
Oh no, 98.
90. When was that? Oh no, when was the 800 though?
Oh, 03.
03 was the first 800.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, and that's what it to me was, because 800 was. I mean, I had a 750 SXI Pro and I love that ski, but the 800 came out, it was definitely like for Kawasaki, it was a game changer. And then they had out. Then when was the last year of that?
11, I believe.
So nothing from 11 to.
Nope. Just 17.
17 when the 1500 came out. Yeah. So, yeah, and then still the same thing. I mean, they produced them. I mean, the SuperJet was a total Scott Watkins thing. That new SuperJet was him pushing Yamaha for years to build a stand-up again.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that was his baby was the new SuperJet. Yeah, that was his thing. Because,
no kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was his. The whole time he was there, he kept pushing for them to build a competitive stand-up again. Build something that we can pair, build something that we can run up against the Kawasaki. They bought a bunch of 1500s, and really the hull design based behind the GP1 boat is from Dustin Ski, was the commander. Now it's the GP1, but that was all Yamaha's hard work and design team that working with Dustin to build a really competitive, really fun stand-up that could be that would be basically like the Kawasaki but lighter. The complaints of the Kawasaki, it's too heavy. You can't throw the thing around. If it gets out of shape, you can't fix it. It's 600 pounds. It's just a monster. And so Yamaha's, they had the TR1 motor. They were already using that motor in the EX series and some other stuff. So they had the engine and pump and everything. They just didn't want to build a hull. So Watkins had just tried and tried and tried. I would say probably for 3 or 4 years, he was pushing that project so hard. Wow. But the numbers are terrible. They sell 1,000 stand-ups a year. Maybe.
There's no ROI.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. There's no ROI. And the bean counters kept saying no. I mean, 17 no, 18 no, 19 no. We're like, man, there's no way. Like, our production will never get our money back. Like, to mass produce hulls and get this thing going. Like, what are we going to sell? 1,000 if we're lucky. Like, and so. I think that was partially the reason why at the end, like, that finally came out. And Scott was getting a little bit older. He retired, semi-retired from Yamaha. Like, that was his baby. Like, he got the SuperJet out finally. And when I first got my first one, I was like, I rode a stock and I just put it back on the trailer after 5 minutes. Wow, that thing was awful. I'm like, the head just doesn't steer.
That was my first experience.
Yeah,
the only ski that's ever pitched me was that new SuperJet.
Oh yeah, it broke.
It hooked and flicked.
Yep. Yeah, Missy broke a couple ribs on it the first time she rode it.
I was laying in the water laughing, going, "What just happened? It was a stock boat."
Yes, exactly. And then I tried to ride it. I put my helmet on, and I was doing a bunch of laps. My 1500. I'm like, I don't know, ride that thing. I finally got mine, and I literally a couple of laps, and I was like, that thing is awful. I'm like, man, the steering's wrong. It slides out everywhere. It basically has a mind of its own when it gets into rough water. So. After basically around $5,000 to $6,000 worth of fixing it, because sponsons and a reflash and give it some more power and we open up the motor a little bit, let it breathe. Completely changed it. It made it from awful to super fun. I would rather ride that than my 1500 on nicer days. Right. In windy days or water's not most tolerant, favorable. Yeah, it's like, man, that would be that SuperJet is really fun to ride in the good stuff, and you get into bumps. The Kawasaki just kills that thing. So. And I don't know. I still don't think that Yamaha's really taken off. People that have them, some do. Some bought them and sold them and went back to 1500s or two-stroke SuperJets.
A lot of people won't struggle through the personalities of these skis. A lot of people I've seen watch buy the 1500s and sell them. Yeah. It's like, I've noticed some of them. There's like a percentage of the 1500s have hook in the bottom of the hull. Yep. You gotta fix that stuff. You can't just buy and ride.
Yeah, right. And it's measuring the hull and seeing if there's, like you said, a bump or a hole in it somewhere. Exactly. That's going to cause that thing to ride
ill,
odd.
Yes,
odd. So, but yeah, I think that's also like another. There's a few of us left. I think there's definitely a general thing of people that will ride stand-ups forever, that love riding stand-ups. They're not going to, unfortunately, my situation now, I don't think, I won't say I'll never ride one again, but it's going to be a long way to be comfortable on one, so I'm kind of regulated to do a runabout, but I mean, there's people like yourself that have no plans of riding a runabout. Like you ride jet skis. That's what you do.
Yeah, I still ride them.
So, and there's a bunch of people. Lawler. I mean, I got tons of friends that are well into their 60s, and they only ride stand-ups. So
my uncle rode stand-ups till he was 72 years old.
Yeah.
And he was like, I gotta hang it up. I don't want to, but
yeah.
He goes, my biggest fear is falling and breaking something.
Yep.
As your bones get more frail.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and that's it. I mean, that's. Like if I was to ride a ski again, I mean, it would definitely, I would buy a new Yamaha and fix it, because I love that ski. That was really fun, like riding cove rides and stuff. I really enjoyed that ski, our morning rides, like down to Springs or whatever. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, Yamaha had a lot to do with Dustin's boats. Like Dustin and Yamaha worked together for years with others from Yamaha and the Yamaha guys in the white coats and like building hulls and bringing them over here, putting power in them and go riding them around and say, what do you think? And what do you think? What do you think? And I mean, they went through several copies, and we kind of thought as a general market that the Yamaha was going to be the GP1, the Commander boat, is what we thought the Yamaha bottom would be, basically very similar to. So, but some minor changes, of course, had to be done, and then with the right power plant and weight distribution and engine set back and forward and all that, there was a lot of changes that had to be made. But I mean, a lot of that GP1 hull design came from the guys that worked at Yamaha that were guys in white coats. Yeah, they had a lot to do with that. So yeah, that's not something where you just thought of it one day and said, I'm going to build a hull like this. I mean, that's a tough thing to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The guys at like Haggis and with all of his work he did with Hydrospace.
Yeah.
And then he basically got in the business of building hulls because he did a bunch of work with Hydrospace, and you have to have a lot of money to build molds.
Right.
And then to throw the thing away after one ride. That didn't work.
Yeah.
That didn't work. And so you're talking tens of thousands of dollars to lay up a mold and then throw it away after one ride.
Decide it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take everything out. I mean, and it could be as small as moving a motor a few inches forward or back. Or the fuel tank forward or back, or the battery over here, or whatever.
I was just a bullet the other day, and they were upset over half an inch. I was like, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's dramatic.
Yep. So all those ideas, they started from somewhere, and then they just modified those. Like they might be using a very similar, same bottom that they've been using, maybe a little change, but man, like you said, you could change something a half or a quarter inch, like an intake track or something like that, and it's going to completely change the way that boat rides.
Absolutely.
And like I said, unless you have lots and lots of money to throw away, man, you're paying a lot of money and time and R&D to come up with something. I know Dustin, I think he just introduced a new boat this weekend.
Oh wow, no kidding.
Yeah, he's got a brand new ski this weekend. There's a new stage or phase, or whatever they want to call it. But he's got a new hull that a few people have them, I think, this weekend, but it's like a modified version of his old one. And a few people said that thing's kind of hard to ride. Others said it's easy to ride. You just got to, they changed. I think it's like significant change, like move the motor a little bit, fuel tank a little bit. I mean, there were some changes to make the boat change, but
sure.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, there's still innovation going on. I mean, they're not just sitting on their laurels waiting for stuff to happen. They're actually out there.
Bold new graphics.
Exactly. Kawasaki repaints the hood and says it's a 160 now.
That's right.
A 160 SXR.
That's right.
All black or black and green. It's like it's the same thing. Because the same thing. There's no sale, so there's no ROI for coming up with new stuff. I mean, it's going to be the same jet ski. I'm like, it's going to be the same jet ski until there's no more jet skis.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. This is the final version.
This is it. Yeah.
This is the final version.
This is it. Yeah. And Taylor's kids, when they grow up, they'll be riding. If they're riding jet skis, they're going to be riding something that's sitting in this garage.
Yeah.
They're
absolutely.
not going to be something new that they're going to get in 2027. It's going to be a brand new stand up. That's not going to happen. So that's pretty funny. Yeah. We had. Nice time. Last night we went to dinner with Dave from Riva.
Oh, nice.
And Mark and Sheffield. And those guys are great guys, man. So we just had fun with them. It was Dave's birthday today, actually. So
that's cool.
We went to dinner last night and just talked industry for, basically the whole dinner.
Oh, that was cool.
Yeah, it was just fun. Yeah, we were talking about watercrafts and stuff. And it's funny, too, because my wife, she was super entertained with it and had a lot to bring to the conversation because she's been around now for 25 years. So she knows and hears me talk about it, relentlessly, talking about the remember whens. God, we did remember whens for 4 hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. Oh my gosh, it was too funny. So, yeah, good guys, man. Like Mikey Young, and man, I can't remember who else I talked to. Just everybody, it's just great. So, and I think still, I'm glad it's still here. Scott Scott ran the race during COVID when no events were going on in the country. And Scott said, I'm putting it on anyway. We'll take all the safety measures we need to do, but he didn't pull the plug like everybody else in every industry.
Right.
So we're not racing. 2020, there should have been no races.
Right.
But he had to race anyway. He's like, I can't miss a year because then you're going to lose that annual. You'll have an asterisk.
That's right.
That's 20 no race from COVID. But he ran it straight through. So.
Well, he's been here, 20 years now? 20 years later, we're still having this stuff.
20 years, it's still here.
Yeah.
The fact he still has it here and it's still an event, Crazy Horse is Crazy Horse, but, I don't know where else you could really have it.
Right, exactly.
Rotary would be beautiful, but you'd have to reconfigure the whole parking thing and pit areas and all that. It's just, that would be too difficult, but it would be a great setting. But, what do you do?
Right.
It is what it is, I'm afraid if it sold, there's a lot of people wanting to buy it and trying to figure this way around Scott, but he's got a lock on it pretty good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But like moving it, like moving it to Florida or moving it to Texas or somewhere where there's, one of the big complaints is, the logistics of getting here.
Absolutely.
Flying to LA or Vegas and having to have boats brought over and renting cars to get to Havasu. But, I remember like probably 20 years ago when there was talk about moving into Long Beach and IGSBA and somebody else at the time. There was new people running. Harry Lonsky from Sea-Doo and some of these guys got involved, big wigs, bean counter guys, and they're like, no, this event could be way bigger. We need to move it to a real city, put it in a real stadium, and make this really something like Long Beach Marine Stadium or San Diego. If they remember, years ago they were in San Diego.
Right.
And it was going to San Diego all the way up until about 2 weeks before the event.
No kidding.
And San Diego Marine Association or San Diego Coalition for Clean Water or whatever said, no way, we don't want that jet ski fuel in the water. We don't want the exhaust.
Right. I remember that. I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were moving like it was done. It wasn't coming to Havasu.
Wow.
And so, my parents, we were devastated because that's the biggest 2 weeks or month for us ever at Walt's is the whole jet ski thing. Everybody at Body Beach and practicing everywhere. There was. It was such a huge
store was full every day. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the city was just so busy with grocery stores and restaurants and rental houses and hotel rooms, and it was just a huge. And that event would last through. You come here right after Labor Day. People would start arriving right after Labor Day and stay the whole month until the finals riding at Body Beach. Every day the place was sold out.
Wow.
And so, then all of a sudden they couldn't get the approval, and at the last minute they called the city basically and said, hey, we got problems. We can't have it here. Can we have it back in Havasu? And of course, at first they were going to put up the no, and everybody's like, hey, don't let an emotion get involved. This is business.
That's right.
Absolutely, come right back. Yep, doors open, get here. So
that's cool.
Yeah, gosh, that was. But that's been to move it to a different location. I remember my dad saying 20 years ago, it's like moving to Indianapolis 500. It's the Indianapolis 500. The World Finals in Havasu was Havasu. Remember the jet ski capital of the world, personal watercraft capital of the world.
That's right.
You can't have the World Finals somewhere else. This is the personal watercraft capital of the world. I remember my dad saying that. That's awesome. I remember in '82 when it was all when my dad got a hold of the guys that when he first became a dealership. And he got a hold of the guys from the IGSBA, and at the time it was a guy named Chuck Dillahay was our Kawasaki rep. I think Bruce Sternstrom and Glenn Bothwell and Rick Lake were working for Kawasaki and the IGSBA at that time. So they came out, and they were all young. Obviously, everybody was young. We're talking 82, 81, 82. And my dad had got wind of this World Finals or this jet ski race thing. And my dad's like, oh my God, you got to come to Havasu. And they're like, what? Please, Havasu, what's that? I never even heard of it. So they got in a little car from Irvine, California.
No kidding.
Yeah, Irvine, California. My dad told me, come out here, I'll take you guys to dinner. You got to check this place out. And Chuck Dillahay was our Cowie rep, and we were only Kawasaki at that point. And they were like, yeah, we'll go to Havasu and check this place out. We've seen some pictures of it. It looks pretty cool. And they came out here and they were freaking blown away by how beautiful it was here. They had no idea this place was even here.
Wow.
Knew nothing about it. So my dad took him out to the Nautical Inn, and he met with Ken Bartels. He owned the Nautical Inn then. Okay. And so my dad met with him, and my dad's like, hey, we want to do this thing, and he's like, oh, you can't do it in the summertime. We're so busy, blah blah. And he goes, no, we're gonna do it in October. We're gonna make it part of. So my dad went to the city, and he was like, yeah, we'll make it part of London Bridge Days. So it'd be the last weekend of the month. Wow. So we used to always be the last weekend of October was the World Finals. When I first started here, it was the last weekend of October. Wow. So they said, yeah, it's the slowest weekend of the year, basically. It still can get away with a little bit of good water, it's good temperature, but it's not going to be winter, and obviously not summer. So they started scheduling all these races, and those guys came out the first time, and it was that was how it started. It was '82 was the first World Finals. My dad was I remember when we were kids, my dad had a big flatbed trailer, and we would go to the high school and we'd borrow bleachers, the visitors bleachers from the high school football team. So on the other side of the stadium where the big bleachers are, we couldn't borrow those. Of course, couldn't move them. But the ones on the other side were lightweight, much smaller.
Oh, portable, yeah.
Portable bleachers. So we got all of the Rotarian guys from the Rotary Club. We met there at 6 o'clock at night and manhandled these bleachers up on top of my dad's flatbed. Drove it down to the Nautical and slid bleachers out of the. Of course, my dad's wheel drive truck. It got stuck. And somebody pulled, this whole thing. Everybody's drinking beers and eating pizza. My dad's like, "It's gonna be the best thing ever." And they're like, "Wow, this guy's really motivated." So
that's awesome.
And and the Tiki Terrace was up there, and everybody started getting a vibe for the Nautical Inn for these races. And man, that was, imagine when it went from 82 to 85, 86. It's all of a sudden it's this place where it's the first year there was probably 7 or 8 easy ups maybe, and it was like I said, it was this Mariner, it was West Coast, it was PJS. I don't think Bush's was part of it. Rec Tech or R&R Jet Tech.
R&R, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So all these guys were here, and Riva, I think, was coming out. This was all these teams. Everybody was kids, and every teams were brand new.
That's incredible.
What are we doing here? I'll bring a trailer with 2 jet skis on it, with numbers on the side. Those guys are racers, That was so funny. I think I gotta send you this picture. That's a picture of me, I think, at the 83.
Oh, wow.
84 World Finals jumping a tire jump.
Oh, I bet you were young.
Oh, I was a kid. Oh, yeah.
That's
It's so
awesome.
funny. I was going nuts.
I bet.
I want to go do this interview. It's going to be fun. I love talking about jet skis.
I know, right? Me too.
Yeah. I'll find this picture. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
That's
hilarious. For sure.
All right, man.
Yeah, we'll insert it in there.
Brother.
Can you do look at the camera and do a thanks for watching?
Hey, thanks for watching.